Hey guys, Carlo Filippo here, your muscle chef, ready to talk to you about this guy, the chicken pound. What do we do with the chicken pound? We prepare grilled chicken in different flavors, 6 to be exact. If you're serious about bodybuilding and you meal prep, don't go anywhere else. This is the company for you.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute weekly question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. Glad you can join us. This is your platform where you can ask Dave all your questions on diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, competitions, whatever's on your mind, of course. The Arnold Classic, say 6.5 weeks away, and that's where we bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, this is that part of the lead up to the Arnold Classic where you start to get competitor progress pictures by their coaches, by themselves. Who have you gotten to see so far, and your initial progress, or initial thoughts rather, 6.5 weeks after the Arnold Classic?
Look, there's no denying this is going to be probably one of the best lineups we've seen in quite a long time. It might be better than the Olympia lineup that we saw this past year. So that alone, it makes it super exciting. Obviously, Ruli Winkler dropping out kind of takes away a little of the luster, but you know what? We have so many good guys going into the show. Guys that are poised to make a difference in that lineup. In other words, guys that are right under elite that are going to maybe make that jump to the elite level status. I've seen pictures of Sergio Oliva Jr., obviously Chris Aceto doing his diet. The guy's ready to compete, you know, probably next week. I mean, that's how tight he is already. So that's a good sign. That means, you know, they can grow him into the show. He looks the best I've seen him. Also, I saw pictures of Patrick Moore that were very, very impressive as well, and hopefully maybe if I get the all clear, we might even be able to release some of those pictures, and people are going to be very impressed. Yeah, I mean, people are impressed with him at the Olympia, and I think he made a couple pounds of improvement for sure. He definitely gained a little bit of muscle. So I know he was out there training in Colorado with Phil Heath, who's one of his better friends, and they were doing some training videos together, and Phil is like kind of like his big brother there. So together with Chris Aceto doing his diet, I think we're going to see a really good Patrick Moore. I also saw, just another aside, you know, Hassan Mustafa is amazing, right? I mean, he was like a breakout guy from last year. Everyone was talking about him. We interviewed him and his wife on RxMuscle. Chris sent me a progress picture, like an off-season picture of me. He's so big. He's absolutely huge. His legs are so reminiscent of Paul Quadzilla de Mayo. He even facially looks like him a little bit. That I'm excited to see what he's going to do this year, too. I don't know what show they're doing yet. No one's giving me any insight on that. But I think it's going to be a good season. I think 2020 is going to make up for whatever we didn't get that we were expecting to get in 2019.
So obviously a lot of excitement. And, of course, starting next week, actually, is going to be the Iron Road to the Arnold Classic. So all the competitor interviews that we do, all the debate segments, Iron Debate, Dave's progress picture analysis segments, Guru Talk, all the different shows and segments that we do relevant to the Arnold Classic begin next week. So keep it locked to RxMuscle.com. Let's go to the questions. The first two questions, of course, from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question, Dave, I'm following your diet approach this offseason. I notice if I go over 200 grams carbs, I have a tendency to add body fat. In my case, do you suggest adding an additional fat? If so, how much do you suggest a 200-pound male can handle in a sitting?
You know, my mathematical formulations that I give people for fat intake for men is usually 3/4 of a gram of fat per pound. So, you know, for a 100-pound man, that's 75 pounds that's 75 grams of fat. For a 200-pound man, it would be 150 grams of fat per day. you can go up and down depending on how fast your metabolic rate is. I could probably take more than that because I have a very fast metabolism. I'm a good fat burner. Usually, like you said, like this person's pointing out, if they get fat when they raise carbs over 200, it means that they don't need those carbs. Remember, carbs are a fuel source. So they're stored as glycogen, which is the storage form of glucose, inside the muscle cells and inside the liver cells. When the muscle in the liver is filled up and there's no place to put the stuff anymore, it goes into fat storage. So there's no reason to take in more carbs. In other words, more carbs are not going to build muscle. They're not. It's not like if you eat more protein, you theoretically can build more muscle because protein is the building blocks of muscle. Same thing with fats. The essential fatty acids, certain saturated fats, are the building blocks of the cell membranes of all the muscle cells. So fat and protein builds muscle. Carbs are fuel source. Now, you don't want to be low on fuel because you don't want to have to use the protein and fat as fuel. But once you've figured out what your body needs to be full, so to speak, to have the gas tank full in your car, putting in more is fruitless. So what you want to do is you want to increase either protein or fat and or both. And usually what I do is I play with protein first. And then if the person responds and grows, then great. If they don't, then I'll increase it a little more. If they don't grow, then then maybe it is a fat issue, especially if they're eating very low fat content or lower fat content than they probably need. What a person needs is a lot of trial and error because you don't know from person to person. My requirements, your requirements, that guy's requirements are all different based on what we are in terms of metabolic machines go. My machine requires more fuel than the next guy's machine. And the fuel that it requires might not be, a high carbohydrate fuel. It might require more fat fuel. So you gotta play with it. And that's what, when you're coaching someone, you want to give yourself enough time with a client so that you can learn what their body prefers to burn.
Second question, again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, as an aging male, would you suggest the use of any SARMs or peptides with my hormone replacement?
It depends what your goals are. I mean, if your goals are to build muscle, and you're already taking hormone replacement, why don't you just throw an anabolic in there? Here's my problem with SARMs. There's no such thing in terms of, as far as I know, of where you can go into a pharmacy and buy a SARM, okay? They might be prescription drugs, or I think one or two of them might be in Europe, but I've yet to see one that comes from a legitimate pharmacy. So they're all pretty much gotten from probably China, more or less. They're not like anabolic steroids where you can actually make the SARMs because they're, so someone's buying the raw materials. Hopefully they're buying the right raw materials and then they're putting them into capsules or whatever they're doing with them. So to me, I don't even know if anyone's even getting real SARMs. There's no way to verify it. There's no testing kits, and they're not that strong. So once again, if you're looking for muscle gains, Anavar, which is the weakest anabolic steroid, and I've said this many times before, is way stronger than the strongest SARMs. So I think people are using SARMs because they are in that gray market area where you can kind of still buy them legally, kind of, online, and they're more accessible. And so people are jumping all over it. And then I think people in their mind say, well, if I'm taking SARMs, I'm really not on steroids, so I can still say I'm natural, and that's, of course, bull crap. So, what are your goals? You want to build muscle? Well, then do a cycle. Take a shot of, with your HRT, take a shot of DECA. Do 200 milligrams of DECA and 200 milligrams of testosterone a week. I mean, you'll put way more size on for that. If you're looking for miracles, and I think people think the word peptide and SARM, and sometimes they interchange the two and they don't even know the difference, that a SARM is not a peptide and a peptide is not a SARM. They think that there's some kind of magic that no one really knows about because they're kind of new, and that there's a magic formula to put them together. Guys, it's hocus pocus. Stop wasting your time. There's no magical formulas. There's no new special stuff out that anyone that the people in the know don't know about. If there was something better than steroids or GH, I would be telling you about them. Believe me, I'd be here being the first guy to say this is what you should be using. SARMs, peptides are not it.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, our handle is official_RxMuscle. Dave talked about the training videos that Patrick Moore and Phil Heath are putting out. We put up one this morning from their recent training session. So over the course of the next month, between progress pictures, anything Arnold Classic prep training related from the competitors, we're surely going to have them on our Instagram handle. Again, at official_RxMuscle. Let's go to South D Champ. Now, he's asking this one way, Dave. I'm going to kind of ask it in a parallel way as well. His question is, why do you think that people don't, quote, honor Lee Haney the same way we honor Ronnie or Dorian? I'll shape it, and you can answer that as well, but I'll shape it in a way where maybe they don't talk about Lee Haney quite as much as they do when it comes to Ronnie and Dorian.
You know what? There's not as much footage, video, photos of Haney, okay, as there was of Dorian and Ronnie. Let's face it. And Ronnie is kind of still, relatively new, so people remember him. It's hard. Arnold, there's so many iconic pictures out there of Arnold, but try to find a picture of Arnold doing a lat spread. There is none, okay? So, I mean, there's just what's been put out there. And obviously Arnold is a movie star. So, but, we don't talk about, Frank Zane's legacy that much. I mean, John Hansen and I just did a thing on Zane versus Franco Columbo, the history of bodybuilding, another segment. It should be up either at the end of this week or early next week. And, I didn't even know a lot of the stories. And I consider myself kind of a historian of the sport. So, Haney was so long ago that people they know of him as the 8-time Mr. Olympia. They know that he was a great guy. They can see all the great stuff he's done, for his family and for the community and stuff like that. But I don't think people really know the Lee Haney that was up on stage unless you saw him compete. I never even saw him compete. That was before my time even. So I think Dorian really ushered in the mass monster era. Ronnie followed that up with even more mass and freakiness with the symmetry. So, I mean, Ronnie had it all. And I think those two guys, took up, 8 plus, Dorian 6 years. That's 14 years of Olympia. So in today's modern era, that, and then you add Phil Heath 7 years on top of it, Haney is ancient, if you think about it. He's, over 30 years ago. It's just, I think, out of sight, out of mind. I think that from his era, Haney was great. And I think if Haney was competing nowadays, he would have been, and he would have used the technology that we had in terms of performance-enhancing drugs and supplements and food. I think Haney could have been an absolute freak show on stage, and he could have beat maybe all of them. Haney just did enough, to beat the guys of his era. No one was even close to him. The only guy who ever came close was Dorian, that last, that 91 Olympia, the last year Haney competed, and Haney still beat him, okay, because he was just better. Dorian was just getting to that point where I think the following year would have been a challenge for Haney, but Haney beat everyone. So and then retired on top. So it was a great run for him, but I don't think he ever had the level of development that we've seen from the modern era guys. Haney didn't have great arms. His calves were weak, but his symmetry and his back were great. His waist was tiny. So imagine Haney with 30 more pounds of muscle. I don't know if anyone would have beat him.
Good one here from CRG, and I'm sure this is one that you're going to be answering a lot of in the course of the next 8 to 10 months. Dave, what's your opinion about what Fakri Mubarak said on his Instagram about how he's predicting Flex Lewis will win the 2020 Mr. Olympia? That's if Phil's not competing. He said Flex between 220 to 230 with his build and lines will be hard to beat.
I think that is probably... I think that Flex Lewis will definitely be top 5 at the Olympia. I think that goes without saying. I haven't seen Flex recently. Flex Lewis as a 212 guy on stage was good, but he had weaknesses. If he would have stood next to an open guy in the lineup, he would have had problems. I mean, is Flex Lewis better than William Bonac? They're probably about the same height, right? I mean, Bonac doesn't have any flaws in his physique, really. I mean, so I wouldn't go on record as saying I think Flex is going to win the Olympia. I think that's a pretty bold statement, and I think that it's not taking into account that you've never seen really Flex standing next to the top Olympia guys in the open class. Also, you got to remember if Roden gets off and his trial is settled and he doesn't go to jail, he'll be back at that Olympia too. And I don't think that Flex Lewis can beat Sean Roden right now. But having said that, look how good Hadi Chupin did in the lineup, right? And Hadi, I think Flex might be as good, if not better, than Hadi. So the bottom line is that it's very easy to make assessments from these pictures that you see on people's Instagram or Olympia pictures of him in a 212 lineup. It's much harder to try to interpolate what he would look like next to the top guys in the Olympia lineup. Even a Brandon Curry is a lot bigger than he is. So I don't know. I would love to see Flex challenging for the title. I mean, that's excitement that we want to see as fans and as people who cover the sport. But I think it's a little bit of a stretch to say he's going to go in and win the Olympia.
Let's go to Banyanats. Ivan, and you did the video. We did it last week, but we released it yesterday. It's about estrogen management. So if you haven't checked it out, it's a really good video, very informative. It's on RxMuscle.com and the YouTube channel. Banyanats. Ivan, can high estrogen levels cause your body to store more fat at certain areas, even if you're in a caloric deficit, or rather make you hold on to those areas of fat?
Yeah, you're not going to store fat if you're dieting, obviously, but it could make certain areas hold. Now, what I always, when I work with women, I put most women on a ketogenic diet, which is high protein, moderate fat, low carb, because that's the best diet for them to burn fat. If you put women on low fat and moderate to low carbs, they have trouble losing body fat on their lower body, and that is because estrogen, as a hormone in general, metabolically speaking, its job is to monitor fats coming into the body, specifically the essential fatty acids. Okay, if they're low or too low, estrogen will tell the body to store fat, or it will hold fat. Okay, so if you're not eating enough food, it'll let fat go from every place else in the body, but it won't let go of the fat from in the hips and thighs, which is the childbearing areas, as I call them. And that's because in times of famine, before the modern age, okay, estrogen basically helped women who would get, pregnant and carry babies have an energy reserve, essentially. Because let's say there was a famine. Let's say there was no, woolly mammoths to kill or whatever, and it was winter, and the all the roots and fruits and vegetables that they were eating were not available. The baby would starve if the mother would starve. So all that fat reserves served a purpose. Nowadays, it doesn't. So if you're going to put a body in a caloric deficit as a woman, but you're not going to give the body essential fats, even though they have low enough energy income that they're going to burn fat, they'll burn fat every place but their legs and hips and thighs. If you put fats into their diet, the right type of fats, what you'll see is a more even distribution of fat loss. And that's a lot of the problems I've corrected with the women that have come to me. They're like, I can never get my butt and my hamstrings tight. And I switch their diet, and boom, all of a sudden they're losing body fat, evenly throughout their body. So, that's a mistake that people make. And it goes back to the old saying, fat is not an option. You need to take in essential fatty acids. Do you need to take them in every single day? No. And that's why sometimes when I construct diets for women, not every day contains fats. Some days will be a protein vegetable type of day. Some days will be the protein and fats, because their bodies can store fats. But I always give an essential fatty acid supplement, like on my Omega Lyse formula, to make sure that estrogen senses everything is cool, because the essential fatty acids are being consumed on a daily basis. The good thing is that essential fatty acids, the omega-3s and 6s, don't need to be taken in large amounts. They just need you need to take the right sources in. You need to have an animal source of omega-3s, like a fish oil, krill oil, something like that, and you need a plant, and then you need your omega-6s, specifically gamma-linolenic acid, which is found in high quantities in borage oil and primrose oil, evening primrose oil. So once again, I took kind of the guesswork out of that, put together a formula of Omega Lyse, which is our #1 selling product right now. And, it just makes life a lot easier. You take 3 pills twice a day with food, and you don't have to worry about it. But you'll see it. You'll see it all the time. And in men who have super high estrogen, you'll see them holding fat around their waist, because that's the men's area of fat hoarding. Or sometimes if they have super high estrogen, you'll see their legs, they'll almost have like a women's fat distribution. So you can't deny your body of what it wants.
Let's go to Ivan Bodybuilding. Milos Sarcev doesn't suggest eating fats and carbs in the same meals while dieting, but having fats only in the first and last meal. I know you like all 3 macros and all the meals, but do you know why he and some other people too prefer it that way? Then the second part is also, what should be the lowest amount of fats during the prep, calorie percent? Let's handle the first part first.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, there's no like set rule. It's logic. I mean, if you're going to eat, your body needs protein, we know that, and then it needs a fuel source. So if you're going to eat protein and carbs, there's no really reason to eat fat in that meal, right? Because your carbs is kind of your fuel source. That's why when I do, with some guys that are genetically freaks, I can give them protein, fat, and carbs in the same meal, and they're going to lose weight, okay? And it just doesn't matter, because I'm giving them a complete, spectrum of the macronutrients. They're getting high protein, moderate fats, moderate carbs, and they lose weight. But for most people, it's either or. So when I start with my guys, I usually start them on what I call protein, vegetable, carb days, which are lower in fat, and then protein, fat days that are lower in carbs. Now, I don't have to do that. In other words, if you give someone fat with carbs in the same meal and protein, you're not going to store the fat more preferentially. But what's going to happen is you might not burn fat as easily if you have so much energy available that your body is going to use the carbs first, and then the fat, you might have too much, you might just be eating too much. So I understand what the theory is. The theory is, pick a fuel source at the meal, especially when you're dieting, so that you're not going to overtake in too much energy, in which case your body's going to want to store some of it. But there's no rule of thumb in terms of biochemical, suicide, in the sense that, oh my God, you're eating carbs and fat in the same meal. The cascade of fat storage that's going to happen because of that is going to be it's going to be devastating. No, that's not the case. It just might be too many. I hate to say the word calories, so I say it might be too much energy.
Let's go to Stone Age Barbell. Have you worked with many high-level powerlifters? And if so, how do you apply your nutrition and high-intensity training principles to a powerlifter?
Well, my high-intensity training principles wouldn't be applied to a powerlifter. A powerlifter would use a powerlifting routine. The only thing that I have done with powerlifters, I don't tell them how to lift. They know how to lift. I tell them how to eat and how to supplement. Because a lot of powerlifters have terrible diets. They think they just got to eat everything in sight, and they don't take enough supplements to assist with all the muscle building and repair that they're doing in the gym. And so they need structure. So once again, it's the same structure as a bodybuilding diet. It's high protein, moderate fat, coming from a lot of good essential fats and monounsaturated fats, and enough carbs to fuel their workouts. The funny thing is that powerlifters don't really use a lot of carbs in their workouts. They do a lot of like onesies, 2Z reps. They might take a long time to do their workout because of the fact that they rest a lot and they're doing super heavy weights, and they have to put equipment on and stuff like that, but it's not like an exhausting workout. They're not doing 25 rep sets. They're not doing 100 sets of 10 to 12 reps. So they're not exhausting an enormous amount of glycogen. So the truth be told, they don't really need a lot of carbs. They need protein and fat to build and repair muscle. They're damaging their muscle tremendously using the kind of weights that they use on a regular basis.
Interesting one here from Wellness Bikini Queen. Obviously, Dave, you talk a lot about the different profiles of your clients and what makes a good client. Well, she wants to know if you've ever turned down clients because they're giving off, quote, uncoachable vibes.
I've given back, I don't usually refund money once people pay me because I'm putting time and effort into it. I've actually refunded 2 people in the history of my coaching. One has psychological problems. I would say that they were probably schizophrenic or something like that, and they were uncoachable. I don't even know why I took the person's money to begin with. The other person was so much of a pain in the neck that it just wasn't worth. They couldn't have paid me enough to deal with them, and I don't want to be blamed for their unhappiness in their life. So other than that, look, I love giving advice. Believe me, my clients out there know. A lot of my clients will call me up, and we don't even talk bodybuilding. We just talk about relationship advice to them. I'll give them life advice. Maybe they feel lost. They don't know what they want to do with themselves, and they have a job they're not happy with. I don't mind. That's great. If you can speak to me in an intelligent way, then I love working with people like that. But there are some people that are just not happy with their own life, and or they have mental illness, which I feel bad for because that's not their fault. And sometimes they're not coachable. And a couple of the people, I don't want to say which person, but one of those people actually has gone from to other coaches. They know the person, so it's not just me. It wasn't like, oh, Dave Palumbo can't get along with this person. This one person has gone from multiple people, and I talked to some of these other coaches, and they laugh at me because I warned one person. I'm not going to even say who. I think I warned. I don't know if it was, I don't want to say, but I warned one person about him, and they didn't listen to me, and then they called me up and said, "Oh, I should have listened to you." So, but look, it's all good. You know, there's a lot. I work with a lot of crazy people. I'm crazy, so I don't mind that. Crazy and obsessed with bodybuilding and neurotic and overbit. That's great. Bring it on. I love it. That's why you pay me as a coach. But disrespectful and just like, you know, if you can't have an intelligent, logical conversation with the person, that's not fun. Those are people that are not that fun. But look, that's the case. Sometimes you just don't get along with. So, look, I've worked with people that I said, I think you'd be better going to this coach. And they have, and they had a great time. And I've had other coaches send people to me, and they got along great with me, but they didn't get along with the other person. So you got to mesh personality-wise with the person.
Classic Peach Physique. Now, last week, the episode that we did, we had a question, so which we eventually used as the title of the episode, and that was, could Arnold in his prime beat Chris Bumstead and some of the elite class of Classic Physique competitors? Well, this is a question that's been bandied about the last 2-3 years with Classic Physique really gaining popularity. Do you think that the Classic Physique division will ever, quote, outshine the open bodybuilding division at the Mr. Olympia in terms of attraction of the show, payout, etc.?
No, only because bigger is better. I mean, we always want to see big, freaky guys. So I think that will always be the star attraction. Even if there's 5 guys at the Mr. Olympia, people want to see the biggest guys in the world. That's what the Mr. Olympia is. Classic might have better competition. They might have a better quality of competitor up there. They may have a more aesthetic looking guy. They may have something that appeals to the mainstream media more so physique-wise. But at the end of the day, the bodybuilding fans always want to see the biggest, freakiest guys. I mean, let's face it, that's just what that's why bodybuilding is so cool. I love that there's a million different flavors now because, you know, it's like, look, when I first started, you know, collecting tropical fish years ago, you know, I had one fish that was my favorite, or 2 fish. You know, I loved Oscars, okay, for instance, because they get big and they kind of have a personality, and that's all I wanted. I wanted to be able to have enough money to buy a big tank to put my Oscars in it. I did that, you know, whatever. 10 years ago, I bought a huge tank. I had the Oscars, and it was awesome. And then I'm like, you know what? They're great, and this is the fish I would pick if I had to have only one fish, but I'm kind of bored. I want to get some other fish. So I bought a smaller tank and I put some other fish in that tank. And then I bought a medium-sized tank and put other fish in that. That's what, you know, that's why I love covering, you know, the Olympia and the Arnold. There's other divisions. I enjoy watching fitness because I like to watch the fitness routines. I enjoy Classic because these guys have amazing aesthetics, you know, on stage. I like watching figure because the girls are like, you know, there's some freaky girls out there. I like women's physique because I like to see, you know, freaky looking muscle on a woman that's kind of beautiful. So there's a bikini, obviously. Who doesn't want to see a bikini girl, you know, strutting on stage? So there's something for everyone, and I think that we all like to have different flavors and different tastes, so to speak. So it's not that the men's bodybuilding open division will ever not be my favorite, other bodybuilders' favorites, but it's cool to have the other ones there too because it just keeps you, you know, more interested, so to speak.
I know we're a little pressed for time, Dave. Do we have time for 1 more, 2 more?
Okay, give me 2 more. It's fine.
All right. Booby Bobby Trap Lord, love the name as always. I don't have a gallbladder. What would be the best way to detoxify my liver?
Well, I mean, your liver's going to detoxify whether you have a gallbladder or not. The gallbladder just stores the stuff that comes out of the liver and then concentrates it as bile and releases it. When you don't have a gallbladder, the liver will produce bile all the time and it doesn't store it. It just kind of keeps releasing it into the small intestine. So, you know, and bile doesn't digest fat. It just breaks it down into smaller pieces. So you just can't eat humongously, you know, big fat meals. You have to just limit how much fat you eat per meal so that your body can handle it with the bile what you're producing. Now, as far as detoxification, as your liver is detoxing and it's releasing the crap, it just goes right into your intestinal tract. So the gallbladder really is not a necessary organ. If you had to give up anything, probably the appendix and the gallbladder would be the 2 choices that probably would make the least amount of difference in your life. I know guys without gallbladders that eat, you know, my normal ketogenic diet. They have no problem with it because it's not an excessive amount of fat you're eating in the diet. Your body can still handle fats. You still have digestive fat enzymes, lipases. You just don't have a ton of bile concentrated, and that's not a problem. It's not necessary. Christian 11 NYC, do bodybuilders using colostrum supplements
He says, dude, so I guess that he's asking if they're using them and what are the benefits.
Colostrum?
Yeah. Supplements. Colostrum.
Okay, yeah. Colostrum is basically the mucousy secretion that mammals produce the first 48 hours after birth. So, even, if you have a baby, your wife has a baby, the first 48 hours of milk production is actually colostrum. It's not really milk. It's loaded with like IGF-1 and all kinds of growth factors and stuff like that. The baby's digestive tract, when it's first born, has no acid in it. There's no hydrochloric acid, so the baby can absorb pretty much anything orally. Hormones that would normally be required to be injected can be absorbed orally, like IGF-1 and growth hormone and some of these other growth factors. However, as the baby's digestive tract develops and they start producing stomach acids, it wouldn't serve to drink colostrum anymore because they couldn't absorb all those growth factors, and that's why the mother only produces them for 48 hours. Now, the colostrum they sell as a supplement on the market, okay, where you can buy, is actually made from cow's milk. So all the growth factors in there, if they're still even functional, okay, are all cow IGF-1 and cow growth hormone, bovine, or that they call bovine GH. You can't absorb those, orally anyway because we have an intact digestive tract as adults. So the stomach acids destroy all those. You're basically just getting some sort of a protein source. I tried using colostrum years ago, and you know what? It has a lot of lactose in it usually because it usually comes along, and it's not usually whey isolate colostrum, So I see it as one of these supplements, that are kind of like a scamish type supplement, only because you really can't utilize what we would consider the benefits of colostrum. Other people would disagree and say, oh, it's great, I rub it on my skin and, whatever, who knows. But once again, remember, the colostrum you're drinking in supplement form is not from a human, it's from a cow. Now, I know lunatics that drink their wives', breast milk that they pump. So I don't see any benefit to that either. If any of you've ever tasted breast milk, it doesn't taste very good. Okay, it's not milk, that's for sure. So people do wacky stuff. If colostrum was a supplement that actually worked, it would have stayed on top of the marketplace as one of the hot selling supplements, and it didn't, because it really doesn't produce what the claims are.
I have to get this question. I know we're really pressed for time, but it is one where I feel like it's important because, Dave, so much in the course of conversation in bodybuilding and training and so on and so forth, we sometimes do forget. People go home, they're drained, they're tired, and maybe they just don't have it to get into the car and go to the gym, or it just takes them a little extra to, get into the gym once they're sitting in the parking lot checking their phone. It happens to everyone. We can't just assume that everybody is a robot when it comes to training. K. Kareem, should you rest when you feel drained, even though it is supposed to be a workout day, or should you push through? And I'm going to add to this, in your experience, or generally how you advise people when they do feel that lull, what do you suggest in terms of them pushing through that barrier and actually getting into the gym?
This is 100% true, what I'm going to tell you, what I used to do a lot. Okay? Even when I wasn't competing, I used to work for muscle development, and I would sometimes drive to the gym like after work, like I would drive to Bev's at like 8 o'clock at night. I would sometimes sit in my car, put the radio on, recline the seat, and I would sleep. Literally. Before I went outside the gym, I would sleep. I would lay in my car, and sometimes I would sleep for an hour and a half, because if I was that exhausted, and I'd get up, and I didn't want to get up, and I rip myself out of the car, and I'd be like, all groggy and stuff like that. I'd usually go into the gym, get a shake or something like that, or buy something, coconut water. And you know what? I always had the best workout of my life. So no matter how run down and tired I was, sometimes even just a 20-minute nap is enough to do that. And no one bothered me. I turned my phone off. I was like in isolation in a dark parking lot, or I would park in the corner if it was light out. No one would even know. I don't know. People said they would pass by, they'd see me sleep, and no one would say anything to me. But I would just sleep if I needed it. And that, to me, and this is before I never used any stimulants, nothing. So I would just rest, and rest right before you train. I'm telling you, you get the best workouts. Nowadays, you know what I do? It's funny, it's ironic, I'm kind of mimicking the same thing. I put my daughter to sleep at night, who's 2, and I usually lay on the floor. There's a mattress on the floor, and I'll lay next to her. She's in the crib until she falls asleep. I usually pass out before she does. I'll sleep sometimes for an hour. I'll wake up at 11 o'clock at night, from 2, or depending on when she goes to bed. My kids go to sleep too late. Everyone else's kids go to bed 7:30. My kids go to bed 10 o'clock. I'll get up and I'll go into my game room, which is on the same floor, and I'll turn the TV on and I'll do my workout for about half hour, 40 minutes. And then I'll go downstairs, I'll have like a shake, and I do my work, and I work on emails till 3 in the morning. So, but I feel so refreshed, not only for the workout, but also for actually working on the computer. So I thank my father for that, because my father was a big napper. He would come home from work, you know, he'd hang out with us kids, and then we would have dinner, and then after dinner he'd go up, he'd take a nap for an hour, because he would go downstairs and he would write. My father was a writer for hours, you know, until 4 in the morning. Then he'd go to sleep, and he'd wake up to teach school, high school, you know, 3-4 hours later. And that's my schedule now. I have 4 hours of sleep at night. I take a nap at night, and it's all good. And, you know, we all become our parents. But naps are great ways to get over that. Now, if your body's completely run down, you're overtraining, you know, and you just have injuries, and that's a good time to take a day off. But don't get lazy just because you maybe didn't get enough sleep the night before. If you can grab a quick nap someplace, I'm telling you, it'll breathe new life into you.
That is going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Tomorrow, actually between today and tomorrow, all new episodes of After Hours. We know a lot of you have been asking about Jimmy the Bull. Well, we've had Jimmy the Bull over the last 2-3 weeks. He has a drop-in Dynamite cameo this week as well. And then, of course, Iron Rage tomorrow. On the channel right now, Dave's video on estrogen management, that is live right now at RxMuscle.com and the RxMuscle YouTube channel. For Dave Palumbo and our producer, Tyler Shore, I'm Sadiq Baruki. We'll see you next time.